The Selari Expanse was a region of vast, mineral-rich void stretching along the edge of the Orion Reaches, a prize contested for centuries. Though sparsely populated, its handful of habitable moons and gas giants held tremendous economic value. Whoever controlled Selari didn't just gain resources, they gained leverage in the council. Clan Velari had held it for 2 generations, one through blood and guile in a previous conflict, but their hold was tenuous, as all holdings were under the Dominion Charter. Titles could be stripped or reassigned, territories carved up like game meat at a noble feast, depending on the shifting tides of power, favor, and wartime honor. The Dominion Council governed from a floating conclave ring around the star Escharion, a behemoth of law, politics, and etiquette masquerading as order. Everything in the galaxy filtered through its lattice of influence, fleet movements, trade rights, even cultural expression. To them, battle was not merely a matter of survival, it was a demonstration of fitness to rule. Velari's traditions were considered unorthodox. They ruled with what they called the principle of accord. Vassals were not slaves, but autonomous partners. Education, autonomy, even intermarriage with sub-clans. It was scandalous to houses like Meraxis, who clung to the ancient hierarchies, which made this confrontation not just a strategic defense, but an ideological clash. If Velari could not hold its territory, its philosophy would be discredited. Meraxis would claim the sector, and with it, the moral justification to drag 100 free vassal worlds into their iron fold. Fleet Commander Thalor stood motionless at the command dome of the VSS Vigilant Crest, watching as another of his cruisers blossomed into shrapnel and fire. The vacuum offered no sound, only light and ruin, but in his bones he felt the vibration of loss. Another name for the ledger, another crew sacrificed. He closed his eyes for a second, just one, and let the weight of it pass through him. This wasn't his first engagement. He had commanded during the Fornari Revolt and at the borderline sieges, but this felt different, quieter, more final, like watching the slow collapse of a dam he had spent a lifetime trying to hold up with his hands. This battle had been doomed from the beginning. The Meraxis Coalition had brought a force of over 200 capital ships, gleaming dreadhulks from 20 subjugated systems drawn together with terrifying cohesion. They didn't just build more ships, they conscripted them. Every vassal world under Meraxis rule was squeezed for resources and labor, forced to churn out military hardware at industrial scale. Their dominance wasn't just economic, it was enforced by decades of hierarchical loyalty, brutality, and fear. Clan Velari, by contrast, had scraped together just 96. Ships contributed voluntarily, constructed slowly and deliberately by independent systems that valued craft and autonomy over mass production. It was a fleet built by allies, not slaves, a symbol of principle, not power, a show of defiance more than a viable resistance. He could have retreated, should have. But the Selari Expanse wasn't just another holding, it was home to millions of Velari vassals. And in the Dominion Council's eyes, territory was fluid, awarded to whomever showed strength. If Velari fled, Meraxis could claim the system outright, citing superior force. But Thalor knew what Meraxis rule meant. It meant indenture, camps, re-education. So he stayed, knowing his fleet would bleed. And bleed they did. Meraxis fought with the cold, brutal efficiency they were famous for. One ship at a time, pinpoint focus, no unnecessary escalation, not yet. But Thaler had seen this play before. Once his ships dropped below 60, they'd switch tactics. Wide pattern strikes designed to break the spine of his force in minutes. His current count? 73. He had time? Barely. The problem wasn't the tactics. Everyone used the same ones. Coordinate lasers on projected positions, 10 to 15 light seconds ahead. Dodge by shifting trajectory mid-burn. It worked, sometimes, but not against 200 ships. Tech had advanced incrementally, better armor, slightly stronger beams, slightly faster tracking, but the fundamentals remained. Victory was math. Romantics spoke of honor and banners, of grand charges across the stars, but all of that cracked under the weight of trajectory calculus and beam coherence ratios. Wars weren't won by heroism, they were won by algorithms, and Meraxis had brought a calculator the size of a moon. Thaler's command staff worked quietly, grim-faced. They knew the routine, knew the expected losses. The best-case scenario was simple: lose a third of the fleet, kill enough Meraxis ships to make it sting, and retreat with honor. Enough to defend their claim at court. Just as he prepared the next maneuver, a comms officer stiffened. "Commander, new contacts, 20 ships, FTL exit 1, light minute aft." Transponders identify as Terran Thalor blinked. The humans? He had almost forgotten about the humans. When Earth first appeared on Velari long-range scans, just a blur of erratic digital pulses, they were barely more than a footnote in the scout logs, primitive, fragmented, and noisy. They hadn't even unified their world governments, and their orbital infrastructure was laughably fragile. But the humans weren't afraid. That was the first surprise. The Velari sent a quiet envoy ship, cloaked and cautious, expecting panic. What they received instead were broadcast packets, negotiation attempts, scientific queries, and something called memes, which still confused Dominion linguists. Within weeks, humanity had identified the Velari vessel, decoded the language, and proposed a trade summit. They didn't beg, they didn't kneel. They demanded a seat at the table and offered solutions of their own. The Velari had been intrigued. Instead of imposing a rigid uplift framework, they chose a different path: partnership. They gave Earth the tools and let them figure out how to use them. Fusion power, climate correction, orbital assembly, and finally, FTL theory. The humans didn't copy, they innovated. Within 3 cycles, they had built not only a spacefaring society, but a fleet. And now they had arrived at Selari with 20 warships. But this was their first real war. Their ships were odd. Domed armor, no visible weapons, no traditional energy ports, just a gleaming curve like a shield from ancient history. "Tell them to hold formation behind our cruisers," Thalor ordered. "They can provide cover during retreat." He resumed command review, analyzing enemy fire patterns, estimating ship trajectories, until another message came through. "Commander, the Terrans are requesting individual targets, 1 per ship." Thalor paused. "Excuse me? They want a separate Meraxis ship for each of their own?" "That's not how this works." He opened the Terran ship schematics for clarification and immediately frowned. No energy weapons, no beam emitters, just a central core, shielded launch ports, and something resembling old missile tubes. Missiles? Surely not. He opened comms directly. "Terran ships, this is Commander Thalor. I appreciate your support, but I must ask, what are your offensive capabilities? I see no mounted weapons." The response came calmly, a Terran voice tinged with formality. "Commander Thalor, our ships carry 12 missiles each. We withheld specs until now due to channel security. Transmission incoming." The data hit his console. Thalor reviewed it. Old-fashioned propulsion, limited payload. Even with stealth coatings and decoy flares, any Meraxis point defense would obliterate them long before impact. 12 per ship? Not enough for saturation. Useless. Still, perhaps the ships could act as decoys, draw fire, serve as mobile cover. If nothing else, he muttered, they'll learn something today. Then the Terran commander spoke again. Commander, we'd like to conduct a test strike to prove combat efficacy. Go ahead, Thaler sighed. Pick something minor. Targeting the Meraxis dreadnought. No, wait. But the order had already been given. Thaler's heart nearly stopped. The Meraxis dreadnought was the centerpiece of their fleet, not just in firepower, but in political weight. To target it directly was almost unthinkable. Not impossible, but unthinkable. The unspoken rules of noble warfare forbade such moves. You didn't destroy your opponent's command ship unless they refused to retreat. You disabled them, captured them, brought them to court in chains, not ashes. This question mark. This was sacrilege. Still he watched. The Terran ship's launch bay opened, and something emerged, a missile, larger than expected, much larger, too large, the size of a civilian freighter at least, glimmering slightly from the heat of its own engines. No attempt at real stealth. At that size, they'll pick it off before it gets close, Thaler muttered. Then the missile vanished. Tracking lost, said the sensor officer. There was an energy spike and then nothing. Optics, Thaler asked. Gone, visuals confirm. It just disappeared. A stealth system that could hide from optics? Impossible. And then the stars themselves blinked. The command dome's primary viewport, calibrated to basic visual range, lit up with a sudden flash. Thaler shielded his eyes instinctively. A burst of light, bright as a newborn sun, flared for a moment at the edge of perception. Impact confirmed, someone whispered. Meraxis dreadnought destroyed. Sensor feeds caught up. The dreadnought wasn't just gone, it had been obliterated, not pierced, not breached, vaporized, split apart in an expanding cloud of radiation and exotic particles, the kind only found in the heart of particle accelerators, or stars. And then came the voice of the Terran commander again. Commander Thaler, shall we proceed to the next targets? Thaler opened his mouth, closed it. The timing, the energy, the impossibility of interception. And the realization clicked. They had used the FTL drive. They hadn't just fired a missile, they had launched it, faster than light, into a target, an idea so simple it had never been done, because no one had thought to tell the humans not to. Panic. That was the only word for it. The Meraxis fleet, so meticulously organized moments ago, was unraveling. Formations collapsed. Ship after ship broke ranks. Some turned to flee. Others attempted evasive spirals with a desperation that defied their training. Thaler watched it all unfold from the vigilant crest. 20 Terran ships, 20 missile tubes per volley, and each of them had 11 more shots to go. Status of the other Terran launches? Multiple FTL signatures confirmed. They've begun a full salvo. Targeting? Appears strategic. They're going for Meraxis command nodes, tactical leads, not random. Not random, surgical. Thaler gritted his teeth. His first instinct was to rein them in, but he stopped himself because the humans weren't wrong. Communications. Get me a secure channel to the Terran commander. Seconds passed. Open! Terran ship, this is Commander Thaler. You are exceeding expectations. We interpreted our orders to mean complete disruption of enemy fleet capabilities, sir. That's one way to phrase it. The battlefield lit up again. Another Meraxis ship gone. then another, and another. Every flash a sun, every strike irreversible. "You realize what this means, don't you?" Thalor asked. "We do, and we accept responsibility." But that wasn't what Thala had meant. This wasn't just a battle, it was a precedent. And once the Dominion Council saw what the humans had done, one of two things would happen. The weapon would be universally banned, or it would be copied by every major house. Either way, the age of ceremonial war was over. He issued new orders. Have the Terrans prioritize intelligent Meraxis commanders, the ones who might rally the fleet, leave the impulsive ones. Understood. Because now Thalor understood something deeper. The future of war had arrived, and it had come not from centuries of refinement, but from minds unshackled by tradition. And the worst part, it had always been possible. No one had thought to try, because everyone had been taught not to. The battle ended in less than 20 minutes. 20 minutes for a fleet of 200 Meraxis warships to disintegrate into slag and spinning debris. For a coalition of noble officers to be silenced, their strategies reduced to footnotes in a new chapter of warfare. There had been no drawn-out exchange of fire, no elegant maneuvering, just 20 Terran ships, each launching ordnance faster than light, each strike rewriting the rules of engagement. The battlefield was quiet now. Even the energy signatures were fading, bleeding off into background radiation. The wreckage of Meraxis vessels drifted in broken patterns, their shattered hulls reflecting cold starlight. It was less a battlefield now than a grave. Thaler stood in stunned silence. The Terran ships had not needed a second volley. They had spent only half their arsenal. They had not chased the survivors, had not asked for glory. They simply stopped, silent sentinels in a new era of warfare. Behind him, the bridge crew remained silent. Not out of fear, but reverence. They all knew what they had witnessed, what it meant. This was not merely a victory, this was a breaking point. "Commander," said his adjutant. "Orders?" Thaler didn't answer right away. His thoughts were elsewhere, already turning toward Asharian, toward the Dominion Council, and what would happen when the footage of this battle reached them. There would be outrage, denunciations, accusations of heresy, and then imitation. Because this was not just a victory, it was a revolution, the age of strategic delay, of drawn-out posturing and ritual, was gone. The humans had shattered it, not out of malice, but out of innocence, out of logic. Why wouldn't you use FTL to deliver a payload? Why wouldn't you fire at the speed of causality? Because we never told them not to. "Open a channel to the Terran fleet," Thalor said at last. "Open!" "This is Commander Thalor, on behalf of Clan Velari and the free vassals of the Selari Expanse. Thank you." The Terran voice came back, steady and unsentimental. "We did what was necessary, Commander." "Yes," Thaler said, "you did. And now the galaxy will have to reckon with that." He ended the transmission and turned back to his staff. "Send a drone to Asharion, full battle data, and include a statement from me." "What shall we say, Commander?" Thaler looked once more at the screen where human ships floated silently over the ashes of a superpower. "Tell them the future has arrived, and it speaks Terran standard."